You know what nobody really tells you about being broke? It's not just the number in your bank account. It's the way your mind never gets a moment of silence. It's the constant calculations running in the background, checking your balance before you order coffee, standing in the grocery aisle doing mental math, saying no to invitations, not because you don't want to go, but because you're tired of explaining why you can't afford it again. Over time, that pressure doesn't just stress you out, it reshapes how you think. When you're broke, your brain is always working overtime, not on creative ideas or long-term plans, but on survival. Which bill can wait? Which one can't? What happens if something unexpected hits this week instead of next month? That kind of thinking consumes enormous mental energy, and most people don't even realize how much of their intelligence is being burned just to stay afloat. For years, I assumed this was normal, that adulthood simply came with a low-grade anxiety hum you learn to ignore. Bills, stress, panic, just part of the deal. I thought people who didn't live like this were either incredibly lucky or quietly lying. Everywhere I looked, the advice was the same. Save more, cut back, make a budget, be disciplined. It all sounded logical, and none of it worked. The problem wasn't that I didn't understand the math. The problem was that my brain was already maxed out. When you're broke, you're not operating with full capacity. You're constantly triaging problems. And when you live in triage mode long enough, you stop thinking about building anything. You focus only on preventing collapse. This is why being broke feels so exhausting even when you're not physically doing more work. Your mind is doing thousands of micro decisions every day. Can I afford this? What happens if I wait? What breaks if I say yes? Decision fatigue isn't a personality flaw. It's a biological response to sustained uncertainty. Here's the part most people miss. Financial stress doesn't just make you unhappy, it makes you worse at thinking, worse at planning, worse at weighing trade-offs. Your brain prioritizes short-term safety over long-term benefit because that's what it was designed to do under threat. So when someone says, "Why don't you just plan better?" they're missing the point. Planning requires spare mental bandwidth, and being broke consumes it. That's why so many smart, capable people feel stuck. Not because they lack discipline, but because they're trying to design a future while their brain is screaming about the present. Being broke is not just a financial condition, it's a cognitive condition. And until you address that, no spreadsheet in the world is going to save you. Most money advice is designed for people who already have margin, stable income, predictable expenses, a little breathing room. That advice assumes you're starting from a place of relative calm. But a huge percentage of people aren't calm. They're juggling unstable income, rising costs, and constant uncertainty. Gig work, side hustles, irregular paychecks. In that environment, traditional budgeting rules fall apart immediately. Take the classic advice, save 20% of your income. It sounds reasonable until you ask a simple question. 20% of what? Of a paycheck that changes every week? Of income that arrives in chunks and disappears just as fast? What usually happens is this. Someone sets up an automatic transfer because that's what they were told to do. For a few days, they feel responsible, adult, in control. Then reality hits. Gas, a forgotten subscription, a small emergency. The money comes right back out, and now they feel worse than before. That failure doesn't just hurt financially, it hurts psychologically. It reinforces the identity. I can't save. And once that identity takes hold, behavior follows it. Emergency fund advice fails the same way. Build 3 to 6 months of expenses. Great advice. Completely useless if you can't even build 3 days. That's not a motivation problem. That's a sequencing problem. When advice is mistimed, it creates shame instead of progress. People don't walk away thinking, "This system didn't fit my situation." They walk away thinking, "Something is wrong with me." We're not fighting math here, we're fighting psychology. And psychology doesn't respond to big abstract goals when you're already overwhelmed. It responds to small, concrete wins that rebuild confidence. That's the gap most financial advice ignores. Every time you get paid, put $20 aside. That's it. Not 20%, not a target number, $20. $20 is small enough that your life doesn't fall apart when it's gone, but it's large enough that your brain notices it. That balance is critical. You open a brand new savings account, not the one you've been dipping into for years, a clean slate, You name it, something that matters to you. Something that represents relief, not restriction. Then you choose a trigger. Every paycheck, every gig payout over a certain amount, every freelance invoice. When that trigger hits, you manually move $20. No automation. That part matters. Automation hides the action from your brain. This rule is about rewiring it. At first, the numbers look unimpressive. 20, 40, 60. But something subtle happens if you stick with it. Your brain starts to relax. You realize that $20 can disappear and nothing catastrophic happens. Once that fear fades, curiosity replaces it. Could I do 30? What about 40 on a good week? And suddenly, without force, the habit grows. This is where the identity shift happens. You stop seeing yourself as someone who can't save. You become someone who saves. Identity drives behavior far more than motivation ever will. When you believe you're building something, your decisions change. Eventually, life happens. Something breaks, an expense appears, and this is where the money finally does what it's supposed to do. You use it. No panic, no shame. You fix the problem and rebuild. Each rebuild is faster than the last because the habit is stronger, and each rebuild reinforces the belief that you're capable. This is what people misunderstand about saving. It's not about never touching the money. It's about having it when you need it. Once you have even a small buffer, decisions get easier. You stop reacting and start choosing. You can wait. You can say no. You can think. From there, the path opens naturally. You increase the amount when you can. You aim for a couple thousand, then a few months of expenses. The $20 rule won't make you rich. Its job is to get you unstuck, to break the cycle of panic and avoidance. The difference between $0 and $500 saved isn't $500. It's the difference between fear and control. Start with 20, not because it's impressive, but because it's possible. And possibility is where everything changes.